Hi, everybody. I hope that you're having a great week. I am Christy Pennison, and I am the founder and also a therapist here at Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting. And I am super excited to be back because we are going to be restarting our live Q&A series. If you are checking us out for the first time, we go live on the first Thursday of the month at 1 o'clock and also on the third Thursday of the month at 1 o'clock. So I'm really excited that later on this month, I'm going to be joined by Lauren Callahan, who's going to be just talking a little bit about integrative health and also just ways, a mindset as we start. A lot of our children and college age individuals start training for college level or high school level sports, about mindset and how that is important in your mental health and your overall function, and when you're doing highly competitive sports. So tune into that later this month. But today we're going to be talking about something that I think we're all maybe going through right now in a little bit, or will go through at some point in your life, and that is preparing for transitions. So I actually one time went on vacation, and it was actually at the beach when I normally take my time to read. And I was reading this really unique article that was out of Psychology Today, where they were talking about that in our life, most of us, especially when we become adults, will go through 3 to 4 major life transitions. And so when we think about transitions, transitions can be small things like starting back to school, which is what a lot of us are doing right now. If you have children, or if you're a teacher, or even if you're a parent preparing to help your child transition back to school, whether it be grade school, high school, college. We are in that time of year where summer is slowly fading away, and we are going into this new season of our year. And so those can be smaller transitions. For some, it's a lot, especially maybe if your child's been out of the school system for a while and then they're making the big leap back into face-to-face school. That can be a big transition. But most of us have 3 to 4 major life transitions, whether that be a loss of a loved one, a loss of a job, a transition, moving maybe across the United States or into a different place that you've never been before. It could be changes in relationships, whatever that may be. Typically, we encounter these transitions. But the thing about it is that, I don't know about you, but no one ever really gives us a roadmap of what to do when these big things happen in our life. And a lot of times, major transitions, or even any life transitions that we experience, can cause a few things. It can cause increased stress because we're leaving something that's familiar and going into something that's uncertain. It can also cause just kind of overwhelm because we are going from an old way of doing things to a new way of doing things. And navigating that uncertainty is things that us as human beings don't always do too well with. We love predictability. We like knowing what to expect. So rapid or unexpected changes in our life can really create this sense of uncertainty and stress that is hard to navigate. And so today I wanted to come on to provide some recommendations or strategies that can help you if you are going through a transition currently. You've went through a transition, in the past, that maybe you're still like, Christy, I can't even figure out how to take one step and put one foot in front of the other. Hopefully these strategies will help you. Maybe it'll help support even somebody else in your life that maybe you can recommend to them. That'll help you get a little bit further down the road. So the first recommendation that I have is prepare. And I say this, we can't prepare for all of the unexpected things that happen in our life. Now, I remember a mentor of mine once said, expect the unexpected, because the unexpected is going to happen. But we can't always prepare for things that we don't know that's going to come into our life, right? That we're not prepared for. But I do think we can prepare that sometimes things will not go according to our plan, right? But have a plan anyways. And so a lot of right now we're in the midst of this back to school. So if you are a parent, a teacher, a student, one of those things that you can do is prepare, right? So we go get our kids their school supplies, or teachers prepare by going into their classrooms ahead of time and getting those ready. So the more we can prepare for a transition that we know that may be coming up, or prepare for the possibility. Right now we're in hurricane season. And so a lot of us have been through this process, unfortunately, more times than not. If you've lived here, and if you're watching and you live in Louisiana, you know how this goes. But there are certain things we can do to prepare that will actually help us if and when a transition happens or unexpected life event happens. We know that we at least know a few things, that we have control over a few things. So the first thing that I just challenge people to do if you're going through a life transition is to try to prepare as best as you can, right? Sometimes we can't prepare for everything, but if we are prepared to say, okay, these are the things I can't control, but here's what I can control. A lot of times that helps to minimize stress, because we can't control everything. But if we can do some things to prepare for a transitions seem to go smoother, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The next thing I'm going to tell you is something that I see people struggle with all the time when it comes to transitions. So I'm going to put this out there, because if this is you, there is no judgment. There's no shame. I do this too. But I think it really needs to be talked about. And that is set reasonable expectations. Okay. And so the reason why I say that is because a lot of times we create these expectations of ourselves, especially in a big transition, that are not realistic. They're not reasonable. They don't give us time to learn something or adjust to this big new thing in our life, right? And so I always encourage people to just have better expectations of themselves. If you're going through a major life transition, and I'll just use some for example, like maybe you're going through an ending of a relationship. Maybe it's a divorce, or maybe it's somebody that is no longer in your life anymore, right? Well, if I expect for myself to just be fine about a relationship ending or moving into another phase of my life automatically, that is unrealistic, right? You are transitioning from maybe a relationship where somebody's been a part of your life for a long time. You may have shared resources, right? You may even have children that are in the mix. I'm just using this as an example because I think it is a life transition that some people experience. Then an unrealistic expectation of yourself would be that I'm going to have this all figured out by tomorrow, right? Or that I'm going to figure this out even in a few weeks or a few months. I've worked a lot of times with people that are struggling with loss in their life, right? And it's unrealistic to, especially if you really loved someone. I always say that the pain associated with loss is directly proportionate to the feelings that you have for someone in your life. And so it's not a realistic expectation to say that I'm not going to be sad on some days, even months, sometimes years after, right? Like, because that person held such a big space for you and a part of your life, like it's hard to transition to not having life with that person. And so whatever your transition is, I think it is setting realistic expectations. So we'll go back to school. That's coming right now. So I think it's relevant to a lot of people. It's unrealistic to expect your children to wake up on time, right? Like completely on the first week of school, right? So it's like, how do we prepare and plan, but set realistic expectation that it may be a struggle waking up. We may have a hard time getting back into a routine. These things may require some flexibility, some patience. But if you set more realistic expectations, then I think you're going to be able to move through things when they don't go according to plan or when things don't happen perfectly. And so with that being said about adjusting to a new routine, when you have had any transition in your life, it can be hard to find your bearing. So I think the pandemic was a great example of this. I remember in 2019 when we first found out that, hey, we all need to go into quarantine. We need to isolate ourselves because they were not sure about what this whole COVID thing was going to be, what it was going to look like, right? I noticed very quickly for myself that the loss of my previous routine really affected me. And so one of the things that in that transition, I figured out that I needed to do, now I didn't figure out this right away, but it was maybe like a week or two in, that I needed to develop a new routine, right? There were certain things that I used to do in my daily life that I couldn't do anymore, like maybe go exercise in like a gym setting or hang out with friends or just do things that were so day to day to me that supported my mood. And there's things that you do every day that supports your mental health and your emotional health and your relationships. that when those things are taken away, it's hard to find ways to reestablish new routines. So developing a new routine, even if it's something basic, like I'm going to wake up and do this one thing in the morning, or by lunchtime, I'm going to do this thing. And then this is what I'm going to do. Creating some type of new routine when you're going through a transition can create some sense of certainty in the midst of a lot of uncertainty or ambiguity. Like you don't know what's going to go on, but this is going to help ground you. And so again, make it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. But as you're going through a transition, creating some type of new routine can be extremely helpful as you go and as you're adjusting to this new phase of your life. Another thing, this might seem a little frou-frou, but I believe in it very much, is create some better dialogue with yourself. I find that we say things to ourselves that we would never say to a friend struggling, right? Like, so if your friend came up to you and said, hey, I'm going through this major life transitions. Maybe I have to move across state lines into a place that I've never moved before for this job opportunity that I have. And maybe they're getting over there and they've lived there for about a month or two, and they call you up or you call them up and they say, hey, look, I'm really struggling. I have been having a hard time making new friends here. I've been having a hard time developing new routines. You wouldn't say to that friend, like, gosh, man, you should have figured that out by now, right? No, you would say, hey, look, I know it's hard, but you're going to get through this, right? And so you would tell them some positive things, probably, unless you're just one of those people that, you just have a hard time doing that. Then you might say some different things, but you would normally talk to them in a positive way. And so part of that when you're going through a transition is being able to engage in some positive self-talk goes a long way. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about, as we're adjusting to going back to school for a lot of people, we're talking about preparing for transitions. And so if you're just jumping in, please catch the replay. But so far, we've talked about how transitions can create a lot of stress in our lives. But if we can prepare, set realistic expectations of ourselves, develop new routines, and engage in positive self-talk, that can often help us through. Now, if you are watching right now and you have a question or a comment or just something that you'd like to ask that you'd want me to respond to, please leave a comment below or in the comment section, so that way I can get to your specific question before we wrap up today. But I am going to give 2 or 3 more strategies to help with transitions that I hopefully will be helpful for you as well. And the next thing that I have is baby steps. And so the reason why I say baby steps is I think about it kind of goes to realistic expectations and positive self-talk, right? If you've ever been around a baby who is learning to walk, right? Most of them do not just go from sitting in a baby carrier or a baby swing or whatever to just walking beautifully, right? They normally struggle to really get their footing, and over time they become better walkers. So I think of this in a way about how to set realistic expectations for ourselves, right, as we're going through transition, but also a reminder that when you are entering something new, it's just taking it a little bit at a time, a baby step at a time, right? It's unrealistic to expect yourself to just move into something really quickly and take a lot of big leaps. That just doesn't work, right? Like we're not going to just go into something new most of the time and just get it automatically or feel at peace about it or feel really comfortable in it, right? And so especially I can think about this in learning new skills or learning new things, right? And so if you're having a transition, it's learning typically to do life in a different way than you have before. And so creating just small, very small goals for yourself and taking those baby steps are really going to go a long way. And I always encourage people that whatever step you think that if you thought you've made it small enough, go back to it and make it even smaller. And this actually comes from a book that I read once called The One Thing. And they say the one thing that people really struggle with when they're transitioning or even when they're trying to accomplish goals is they don't break the steps down small enough to where they're actually able to follow through with it. And so as you're developing that new routine, as you're setting realistic expectations, just remember baby steps. Baby steps will get you where you need to go. Actually, a lot quicker than trying to take leaps into something that you've never done before. I always think consistency is key. So every morning I wake up, if I had a bad morning or had a bad day the day before, okay, that didn't work. How can I break it down even smaller? How can I set more realistic expectations of myself? So if you're just joining, please drop a comment or a question about maybe some transitions you're struggling with, and I'll be happy to help as we're just wrapping up on some of these suggestions. But the next suggestion I have is to stay connected. And so I always say that we were never meant to be on an island by ourselves. If we were, we would have been dropped off there, at birth. But we weren't. We were made for community. And one of the things that I think we need as humans, and I have found this so much so to be true, I guess, in my line of work of being a counselor for over a decade now, is that we need connection. We're made for connection. We're built with connection. And when we're going through transitions, a lot of times we want to do something that goes against staying connected. We want to isolate because we're trying to figure it out, or we don't want people to know that we're struggling, or, hey, this is hard. I don't want to make somebody else responsible for this transition that I chose to do. But the worst thing that you can do when you're going through a transition, especially when I think of things like loss of a loved one, right? We want to isolate, we want to withdraw, but really staying connected with other people is super important, because those people are going to help you be able to make it through this really tough time or hard transition in your life. And some transitions can be positive, but any kind of change is hard. So even if it's a positive transition in your life, being able to stay connected with others is really important. And so I do have sometimes people that I know that they transition into a whole new thing, but they may have not had a whole bunch of supports. And so this is where I go to the word intentional. It can be hard to build new friendships or new relationships the older that you get. I just have found this. I don't know if you found this to be true, but I do think that as you get older, it can be harder. But I think of a close friend of mine I've recently saw. They moved to a completely new city. And so one of their goals was baby steps in this big transition of their life. And they slowly put themselves in places to build these friendships, whether it be joining a book club, or I think they went to some kind of exercise place and built friendships there. But they took really small steps, and it was really uncomfortable, but they took it a little bit at a time. And eventually they built their whole new friend group in this new location that they transitioned to. So just remember, stay connected. And then also back to the other strategy, which is baby steps. And last but not least, it kind of goes back to positive self-talk. You can see how all of these strategies relate to each other, but is practice self-compassion. Anything that we're doing new is hard, uncomfortable. As human beings, we like to avoid discomfort, painful emotions. Like, just ask anybody if they have something hard, we typically want to avoid it. I mean, I even had to do this run this week, and I can tell you I did kind of maybe quit a little bit too soon, but I just wanted to avoid it because it was hard. It was uncomfortable. And so when you're going through big transitions in your life, even in this back to school phase that we're in, where a lot of people are in right now, practicing self-compassion goes a long way. And it just means that I'm extending grace to myself, and I'm telling myself that it's not lying to myself, but it's saying that, hey, you're figuring this out. And just like I would give grace to somebody else to figure it out, or compassion to somebody else to figure it out, that I'm also reminding myself to do the same thing for me. And so to practice self-compassion. So just to kind of recap, thank you for watching. If you are catching this on the replay, or if you're watching live with us, I hope this was super helpful for you. If there is something that you would like us to talk about in the future, or if you're really interested, I mean, we have a group of highly skilled therapists that work here with all different areas of specialty and expertise. So if there is something that you want us to talk about, we would love to be able to provide that information to you. We love to come on here and share and give information, because we know that maybe therapy is not always accessible for everybody. And so we want to share some of the strategies that we have seen helpful with the individuals we've worked with throughout the different things that they might go through in life. And life transitions is a big thing that we work with people on, because life transitions are hard, especially unexpected life transitions. And it's hard to find your way back to yourself when you have experienced tremendous loss, whether that be a loss of a job, a loss of a spouse, a loss of an important person in your life, or any kind of transition that's unexpected. It's having somebody to help guide you or help walk that journey with you until you get to the other side can be really helpful. So just to recap, if you're going through a transition, remember that life transitions are normal. It is a part of life. But that the more that you can prepare for it, set realistic expectations, develop new routines, talk to yourself in a positive way, take baby steps, stay connected, and practice self-compassion, the more you'll be able to move through that transition, right? Even though it's hard. So I do want to just give an opportunity. If you're watching right now and you do have a question, please post it in the comments before we jump off today. But while we're on here, I do want to tell you just some really exciting things that are happening here at Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting. Number one, if you ever feel like, hey, I want to talk to somebody, but I don't know how to get this thing started. I've never done counseling or therapy before. What does that look like? Please feel free to reach out to us or check out some of our blogs that we've written on our website at beinspiredcc.com/blog. There are some great articles on there about like, what is counseling anyways? Would my child benefit from counseling? So just encourage you to check those out because there's a lot of good resources and information on there. But if you are thinking about it, give us a call. Our number is listed up there on the top of the screen. Give us a call. Just say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm doing this thing right, but this is what I'm thinking. I think I need help. I think I want to talk to somebody. And our client coordinator will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. But I also want to give some exciting news that we'll be sharing more about. So this is kind of like, I guess, stay tuned for our practice is we're actually going to be opening another location in a different city starting in the beginning of October, maybe the end of September, depending on how fast things go. So we're excited about continuing to be able to help more people. You know, this organization was founded on a vision, really, and an idea of just being able to provide quality mental health services to our community. And so we're excited about the possibility to expand that to a new location where to just be able to provide more access to mental health services. I mean, there's been a lot of things a lot of people have gone through in the past several years that have been really tough and really challenging. And I have found personally, just walking people through the journey, that therapy is extremely helpful and beneficial. It really can help you get to a better place in your life. But I think it's important to find the right therapist and a therapist that really fits with what you're needing help with, and that somebody that you feel safe and comfortable with. So that way you can be vulnerable and get the help you need to move forward and live fully. And so stay tuned about that in our new location that we're going to be having. We're really excited about that and to give more information. So, well, thank you for joining me today. Again, come back and join us. I'm going to be here with Lauren. This was like a thing for me today, but we're going to have all of our therapists on in the next couple months. Our next time that we're going to go live is on August 18th, which is a Thursday at 1:00. And we'll be here with causes a lot and in a few different areas. But one of the things we're going to be talking about is something that she's very passionate about, and that's mindset, especially in competitive type sports and integrative health, and some topics around that. And so if you have anybody that you know that is either is competitive in some type of sport, or they may be a triathlete, you may have a child that's in baseball, you may have, individuals that compete in sports. We're going to be talking about a lot of mindset things that are really important. A lot of times we can get really overwhelmed and say, okay, again, have this expectation of ourselves. And we see it sometimes in kids too, that put a lot of pressure on themselves to perform at a certain standard. But how can they do it in a way that is healthy, in a way that supports them mentally and emotionally, while also enjoying and engaging in something that they love, which is a sport that they're playing. So join us back then. We'll be excited to connect with you. And as always, if you have anything that you want to let us know or give us feedback on what you'd like to see in the future, please reach out. But until then, have a great week.